The goal of my research program is to create a new oyster line that serve for the oyster industry. I'm a geneticist, but I more think myself an oyster breeder. My interest is to use the genetic knowledge to improve the oyster's economic traits, such as fast-growing, high survival that oyster growers care about. We are conducting an oyster genetic breeding program at Pearl that started 3 years ago. In this program, the genetic method we are employing is triploid tetraploid method. Triploid oyster have 3 sets of chromosomes, while the normal oyster have 2. The tetraploid oyster have 4 sets of chromosomes. The triploid oysters in the market are produced using tetraploid oyster mating with diploid oysters. Due to the uneven chromosome number, reproduction cannot occur in triploid oysters, though they are sterile. They can save the energy that are used in reproduction for their growth. Therefore, they have a faster growth rate and higher meat quality than the diploid oysters. Actually, the triploid food are often seen in our daily life, such as bananas, seedless watermelon, grapes, and some other fruits or fish. One objective of our program is to create new tetraploid stock for Maryland oyster industry using native oysters that are supposed to be more adaptive to local environment.
So my name is Matthew Gray. I'm an assistant professor here at Horn Point Laboratory, and I study oysters. Much of my research focuses on oyster aquaculture, and a lot of my projects are focused on how to improve production, help growers grow oysters more quickly, get them to market sooner. And then the other aspect of it is I'm very interested in understanding the beneficial environmental effects of oyster aquaculture. I have a number of students as well as projects right now that focus on how to grow oysters more quickly, how to make a better quality product, and then give that technology to the industry and let them kind of run with it.
The other genetic breeding method we used is genotype-based selection. There are a lot of genetic variations among individuals. These genetic variations, we call it genotype, and they have a different effect to the trait. If we know some genotypes highly associated with a trait, or we can estimate all the effect of these genotypes to the trait, then we can make prediction using this genotype when selecting the broodstock. The oyster seed produced from those selected broodstock are supposed to have a higher possibility to have our desirable trait. I also hope through my study and effort to help people know more about this species, especially people may have some concerns on the genetic methods I just talked about, if it is harmful or safe to people's health. So now I would say it's very safe, even if it is a genetic method that we use, but that method doesn't involve any modification of their genetic contents, because the genomic selection we use is based on recognition of their genetic variations. That genetic variation exists already. So based on the variations, we select oyster and make the spawning produce oyster naturally. So they are totally safe for eat.
I think one of the more interesting questions that I'm trying to tackle is how we can leverage the ecosystem services that oysters provide in an aquacultural context. So where can we grow oysters? How can we grow them in such a way that we get the maximum amount of environmental benefits? That's, I think, a really interesting question, a really challenging one at this time.
Ultimately, the biggest challenge, I think, is the industry still lacking the high-quality oyster stock to overcome those bio or abiotic challenges about the high effective breeding method or technologies and more superior oyster stock are very needed by the current industry. That is also the joint objective of all oyster researchers and breeders. In Maryland, I think the major challenge is the low salinity. The ideal salinity for oysters reproduction and growth is more than 15. Maryland is located at the upper bay of the Chesapeake Bay. Most areas, the salinity are lower than that number. Even worse, some years the salinity declined to under 5. That is a disaster for oyster breeding because the larvae cannot survive in that salinity, and it causes mortality and super slow growth for the adult oysters. So in Maryland, the oyster researchers put focuses on improving the low salinity tolerance and breeding successes.
I think the biggest challenge that is impeding the growth of the industry is just getting oysters out to all the consumers.
So the oyster agriculture has become the top one agriculture industry in US currently, but still there are lots of people haven't eat or don't like eat this species. I think I hope people can have more chance and to try this, see if it's very nutritious and delicious.
So it would be great if you were in Iowa, for example, and on the appetizers portion of your menu, oysters are right there. That's not always the case, but oysters can be grown really readily in a lot of bays and estuaries. We need consumers throughout the United States to eat them, and we need to get those oysters to those consumers. So supply chains and just growing the American palate, I think, is a hurdle right now.
So I'm very surprised when I give a class at Morgan State University. So all the students in the class never eat oyster before. I hope more people can go into the market or restaurants and eat oysters.
I would say oysters are generally well known to provide a suite of environmental services, and many of those services are conserved through aquaculture. So when you eat a farmed oyster, you're actually promoting environmental health. So eat oysters and make the world a better place.